gracious and just. They've been given blessings. Did they deserve it? No. He's gracious. But eventually it's going to catch up to him. So, this is out of 30. We had done the first part of 30 last week, right, Doug? So we kind of stopped here. Therefore, the Lord longs to be gracious to you. And therefore, he waits on high to have compassion on you. For the Lord is a God of justice. How blessed are those who long for him. For you people in Zion inhabit Jerusalem, you will weep no longer. So, like I said, all the things that are going on around them, Assyria is conquering most of Judah. He will certainly be gracious to you at the sound of your cry. When he hears it, he will answer you. Although the Lord has given you bread of deprivation and water of oppression, he, your teacher, will no longer hide himself, but your eyes will see your teacher. Your eyes will hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. Whenever you turn to the right or to the left, and you will desecrate your carved images plated with silver and your cast metal images plated with gold, you'll scatter them like the filthy thing and say to them, be gone. So he's promising something that's going to happen. When before have they cried out? They're seeing all this going on in Judah. Everything's getting conquered, and they're in Jerusalem. But where have they cried out before? Yeah. Egypt. Egypt's the biggest one. They were there for over 400 years, and they cried out, and then the Lord answered them and got them out of Egypt. What's he freeing them from this time? He freed them from the Egyptians last time. What's he freeing them from this time? What's going on? Who's trying to... This is really focused at Jerusalem. What are they trying to do? Who's trying to do what? Let me put it that way. Assyria is attacking. Which king from Assyria? Huh? Nope. Darius is a Mede. Sennacherib. Yep, it's Sennacherib. And it looks like everything's fallen, okay? And do you remember how God took care of Sennacherib? He had thousands of his troops right around Jerusalem. They were going to put it under siege. And the Lord came in, and he killed most of them. So how did he answer? How did he answer then? How will it answer now? How did he answer before in the captivity? And how is it different now that he's talking about it here? What was the final plague? Death angel. Killed all the firstborn. Man, animal, didn't matter. Except for those that were protected by the Lamb, by the sign of the Lamb.
Blood on the door.
Blood on the doors, on the lintel, and on the doorposts. This particular time, they're protected Jerusalem, but they're still protected in the same way. God moved to protect them. They didn't have to lift a finger.
Even the king's son died.
Yes. Pharaoh's son died. So here's the comparison here is that, and who was the Jewish king or the Judah king that was the one that at this particular time with Jerusalem brought them around? Which one? Hezekiah. Hezekiah. Then he will give you rain for your seed, which you will sow in the ground, bread from the yield of the ground, and it will be rich and plentiful. And on that day your livestock will graze in wide pasture. Also the oxen and the donkeys that work the ground will eat seasoned feed, which has been winnowed with shovel and pitchfork. And on every lofty mountain and every high hill there will be streams running with water on the day of the great slaughter, when the towers fall. And the light of the full moon will be like the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be 7 times brighter, like the light of 7 days. On the day the Lord binds up the fracture of his people and heals the wound he has inflicted. So, kind of steps forward a little bit here. Because after Hezekiah, what happened to Judah and Jerusalem? The son took over. Manasseh. Manasseh was terrible. And they never got a good one from then on. Okay? So they kind of went down a path where they just got farther and farther and farther away from God. So they're taken away. So it kind of stepped forward here. What will you be like when the few return from Babylon? Everything's kind of been left. But what happens? Well, nobody here's a farmer. But one of the ways is crop rotation for the land. Why do you do that?
To keep it around,
Huh?
because you crops one time and then you let it stay and then you do another.
That's what you crop rotate. And you said? Yeah, it's to refresh the land. Okay, it allows the soil to recover,
Yeah,
because
my uncle used to be on a farm and I remember a lot of it.
what do you exhaust out of the soil when you constantly plant?
Yeah,
All the nitrogen.
yeah.
Okay, so it allows it to rebuild in the streams and like that. So he says that day it will be, and I think that's what he's talking about here. This is Nehemiah as far as when they came back. And he talks about who came. The whole assembly totaled together 42,360 besides the male slaves and the female slaves, and there were another 7,370. And you can look at the numbers that were there. About 50,000 came back. How many people do you think were in Jerusalem when they took them to Babylon? Hundreds of thousands. Okay? 50,000 came back. That's not very many. That's a small group. But that group that came back wanted to serve God. A lot of the group that went to Babylon didn't. Behold, the name of the Lord comes from a remote place. His anger is burning and dense with smoke. His lips are filled with indignation, and his tongue, is like a consuming fire. His breath is like an overflowing river, which reaches to the neck, to shake the nations back and forth in a sieve, and put them in the jaws of the people, the bridle which leads astray. You will have songs as in the night when you keep the festival, and gladness of heart as one who marches to the sound of a flute to go to the mountain of the Lord, to the rock of Israel. So, where's the mountain of the Lord in the context of time where this is? It's in and around Jerusalem. The mountain of the Lord, that's where he is. That's where he is residing for the Jews at this particular time. What's the festival they're going to keep? Remember, Isaiah's talking about in the future, but what's the festival they keep? Huh? You might think it was Passover. What I pulled out of here was out of Ezra. This is just after they really start to get things underway, because it's Ezra chapter 8. So we're well into Ezra. Then Nehemiah, who was governor, and Ezra the priest and scribe, and the Levites who taught the people, said to all the people, "This day is holy to the Lord your God. Do not mourn or weep," for all the people were weeping when they heard the words of the law. So the law has been now read for the first time in I don't know how many years, okay? Because it hadn't been read before they left to go to Babylon. Then he said to them, "Go eat the festival foods, drink the sweet drinks, and send portions to him who has nothing prepared, for this day is holy to our Lord." Do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your refuge. So the Levites silenced all the people, saying, Be still, for the day is holy. Do not be grieved. Then all the people went away to eat and drink, to send portions, and to celebrate the great feast, which because they understood the words which had been made known to them. So this is after the reading of the law. They've reestablished themselves. I think the foundation has been restored, and they're starting to build the temple. And so this is really a dedication of being back there and trying to get back to serving the Lord. And they have a very big festival for it. It's not anything I think they continued to do. I don't think have you seen anything, Doug, or anybody else seen anything that continued on in the Old Testament that talked about this being a festival they continued to keep? I've never seen anything. It was just, because I don't even know when this was. I don't know what month this was or anything. I don't think so. Okay, so, and the Lord will cause his voice of authority to be heard, and the descending of his arm to be seen in fierce anger, and in the flame of a consuming fire, in cloudbursts, downpour, and hailstones. For the voice of the Lord, Assyria will be terrified when he strikes with a rod. And every blow with a rod of punishment which the Lord will lay on him will be with the music of tambourines and lyres, and in battles, vanishing weapons, he will fight them. For Topheth has long been ready. Indeed, it has been prepared for the king. He has made it deep and large, a pyre of fire with plenty of wood. The breath of the Lord, like a torrent of brimstone, sets it afire. So he's saying, and I promise Assyria is going to pay for what they've done. How did he strike the Assyrians with his rod? Remember your history? He used the Babylonians. The Babylonians conquered the Assyrians. And then he used the Babylonians to discipline the Jewish people. What's Topheth? Topheth? Anybody know what that is? Huh? It's an area or a pit where they offered their children up in fire, burned them to death in worship. And what he says, that hell, like you said, that hell, that terrible place is what's reserved for the Assyrian kings. So, here is help, not in Egypt, but in God. So here's a contrast. Don't go to Egypt, go to God. And again, they're being disciplined by the Lord. And he's saying, I'm doing it so you come back to me. I'm not doing it so you go to another country. So, woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and horsemen because they are very strong. But they do not look to the Holy One of Israel, nor seek the Lord. Yet he also is wise and will bring disaster, and does not retract his words, but will arise against the house of the evildoers and against the help of the workers of injustice. Now the Egyptians are human and are not God, and their horses are flesh and not spirit. So the Lord will stretch out his hand, and any helper will stumble, and the one who is helped will fail, and all of them will come to an end together. So this is chapter 31. And part of the way the interpreters of the Bible did was, when it's a big change of thought, it's a new chapter. And this is a new chapter. It's talking about Egypt and not making those alliances. So why did he mention horses and chariots? You went to them because of horses and chariots. Why did he mention that?
Because that's what they had.
Well, they had those, yeah. But why is that important? Huh? It's power. If you're on a battlefield, you've got your soldiers, right? Your foot soldiers. What's one of the weaknesses they have? Their flanks, right? If you can meet them head on, that's where your power is. But if they get outflanked, so what can you do with a horse and a chariot? You can outflank them, okay? And if they have lots of horses and lots of chariots, your chances of outflanking are even higher. And he's saying, you're looking at it wrong. You're looking at it wrong. Those horses and chariots, they don't hold a candle to what God can do. You're looking at it wrong. Who's he contrasting to go to for help versus the Egyptians? Yeah, he says, come back to me. Who will God arise up after and why? Well, but he'll rise up after. In other words, he'll arise up after those people. And why? Is he's going to go against the Egyptians. Why? Because they're a threat to the people. Because what happens every time? Invariably, they have an alliance they have with idolaters. They bring in their gods. Every time they bring in their gods. He conquered the people of Canaan, but not all of them. Made alliances with some of them, brought in their gods. So, what does Isaiah compare between the Egyptians and God? It's in verse, what would that be? Yeah, verse 3.
Remember, people don't know, they don't have God on their side.
They don't have God on their side. And he says, the Egyptians, they're human. Their horses are flesh. But what I have is spirit, is power. I stretch out my hand and I take things out. The Egyptians have to have a big army. Who is helpful and who is helped, and what will happen to them? That's in latter part of verse 3. The helper will stumble, and the one who is helped will fall. Who's the helper? It's the Egyptians. The helper that they want is the Egyptians. Who are the Egyptians supposed to help? The Jews. They're going to fall too, because they relied on the Egyptians, not God. But this is what the Lord says to me. As the lion or the young lion growls over his prey, against which a band of shepherds is called out, and he will not be terrified at the voice, nor disturbed at the noise. So will the Lord of armies come down to wage war on Mount Zion and on its hill. Like flying birds, so the Lord of armies will protect Jerusalem. He will protect and save it. He will pass over and rescue it. So, and this is saying, don't rely on Egypt, don't rely on Egypt, I will protect you. Where's this focused at? What part of Israel or Judah is this focused at? When Hezekiah made his reforms, he made them in Jerusalem. And he tried to make them out throughout the country. But the people kept going back to it out in the country. In Jerusalem, they stayed focused because Hezekiah kept them focused. But this is really focused at Jerusalem. I think this is going back to saying, Sennacherib, if you turn back to me, I will protect you. Don't go to Egypt. Don't do what Israel did that, didn't they? Israel made their first alliance with who? Assyria. Aram was going to invade them, which was the area a little bit south of Assyria. And that turned into a disaster because Assyria came down and conquered all of Israel, every bit of it. So here he's going to protect Mount Zion. What's the allusion Isaiah is making to flying birds that he will pass over them to protect them? I had to do some reading on this one. How about this one to Exodus? The Lord will pass through and strike the Egyptians, but when he sees the blood on the lintel and the doorpost, the Lord will pass over the door and not allow the destroyer to come in houses to strike you. The death angel passed over all those people and saved them from the Egyptian captivity. He did the same thing when he went over and saved them from Sennacherib. Return to him against whom you have been profoundly obstinate, you sons of Israel. For on that day every person will reject his silver idols and gold idols, which your hands have made for you as a sin. And the Assyrian will fall by the sword, not wielded by a man, and a sword not of man will devour him. So he will not escape the sword, and his young men will become forced laborers. His rock will pass away because of panic, and his officers will be terrified by the flag, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion and whose furnace is in Jerusalem. So, on what day will the people of Israel reject their silver idols and gold idols, and why? And they've stayed obstinate. Okay, so this is going a little bit ahead. What did you have gods for? Well, to pray to. But why? What would you pray for them? For protection. For stuff you wanted, but they were supposed to protect you, right? And when finally Judah falls and Jerusalem falls, at some point, you see all of Israel is falling. Judah hasn't fallen yet, but all of Israel falling. They've got all of these idols. What are they going to do with their idols? Didn't do us any good. Must be just a worthless piece of silver or gold that didn't do anything for me. So they're going to throw them away. They're going to say, this guy didn't do me any good. Maybe the guy who just conquered me, maybe his God will do it. Do a better job. How does Isaiah state as a reason the people of Judah should not fear the Assyrians? Particularly the people of Jerusalem. Yeah. It's his home. It's his home. At this particular point, he's not going to let them fall to the Assyrians. And I didn't pull it out of, it's in 2 Kings and also in 2 Chronicles, but what happened to Sennacherib when he went back home? When he lost all those men and he went back home? His sons killed him. Because it says, young will be forced labor, but you have where he did not escape the sword. But the sword wasn't because of a soldier, because of his sons. They killed him because he failed so badly. So the glorious future. So we're into the next chapter. So it's changing yet again. So we're looking at the glorious future. Behold, a king will reign righteously, and officials will rule justly. Each will be like a refuge from the wind and a shelter from the storm, like streams of water in a dry county, like the shade of a huge rock in an exhausted land. Then the eyes of those who see will not be blinded, and the ears of those who hear will listen. The mind of the rash will discern the truth. The tongue of the stammerers will hurry to speak clearly. Like I said, new chapter, kind of a new thought. Who's the king? And we've flipped ahead in time significantly. It's Christ. Who'll be the officials? could argue it would be the apostles. I could argue it could be us. Because we were given the Great Commission by Christ to go out and preach the word, the gospel to everybody, everywhere. And what does an official do with a king? Particularly in the construct of the time that Isaiah is talking. What do officials do for the king? Carry out his bidding. Follow what he said to the law, to the rule. Absolutely follow it. How is someone who can see blind and those who can hear deaf?
People don't believe in Christ.
Those are people, they don't believe on what they're seeing, okay? Those who have rejected God, they've rejected His law, they've rejected His word, they're blind. They can see, but they're blind. They can hear,
And they don't.
but they're not listening. Yeah.
On that. Because sometimes, I know every day I'm learning new things
Mm-hmm.
and what things, a deeper meaning of, maybe like reading in the Bible when I spend time with God.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I feel like I'm blind and I didn't.
Think about it with the time. Well, you're trying to learn. You're trying to grow. At the time when Christ came, even the Jewish community was, better educated per se than the normal rank and file person in the world at that particular time. But what would you think is the literacy level of those, even in Judea? It wasn't very high. What did they say when Peter started speaking on the day of Pentecost? Listen to these learned men. How did they find all this stuff out? It's because they were fishermen. What did you need to, how much do you have to be able to read to be a fisherman? 0. It's a learned skill. So the literacy level wasn't very high. So who was supposed to lead them so they could see? Who was the ones that were supposed to speak to them so they could hear? Well, Christ did it, but who was supposed to do it? The Jewish leadership. The Pharisees, the Sadducees were supposed to be leading them. Instead of leading them to God, they were leading them into a ditch. It was the blind leading the blind. He makes that reference to say, it's the blind leading the blind, and you're leading them into a ditch. You're blind to my word, and you're teaching them to be blind, so they're blind. And what he's saying here is, when Christ comes, the people who can see will be blind. Who are those? The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the leadership in the Jewish community. Those who could hear, who will be deaf. They didn't listen to Christ. They didn't want to listen to Christ. Yes?
Isn't it interesting that Christ chose the fishermen instead of going to the scribes to change how they led the people? A fisherman is a patient person. They have to wait for the bite. And I think sometimes he chose them because of great patience. Those people.
They're very patient. You've got to be patient because, Well, the night that Christ came to Peter and John and James, I think they were all 3 together. James, John, brothers, and Peter that were fishing. They hadn't caught a thing. He said, put your boats out, cast your net off. They brought in the biggest haul that they'd ever brought in. But you saw their heart. There was all that money sitting there with all those fish, and they left it. A Pharisee or Sadducee most of them would never have done it. I can't put them all in that bucket. Because who were the two Pharisees that were with the Sanhedrin that were seeking God? Who were the two of those? They both came and claimed Christ's body as a hint. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. Both of them were on the Sanhedrin. So you can't condemn all of the Pharisees and Sadducees because there was some that were seeking God. They just had been teaching it wrong for so long, they had a hard time understanding. But most of the Pharisees and Sadducees weren't interested. Their interest was power. That's all they wanted, power. Keep the power. What does it imply regarding the truth that the rash will discern and the stammerers speak clearly? That last part of it. The mind of the rash will discern the truth, and the tongue of the stammerers will hurry to speak clearly. The truth is so simple. Even the rash person who just runs into things like that, they're going to understand it right away. Even the stammerers, it's going to be so clear and crystal clear. They won't have to try, a whole bunch of words to try and explain it like that. It's going to be so simple. The gospel is so simple. Understanding that piece is the first piece of becoming a child of God. You're on the milk, but it's still the first piece. And it's so simple. He's going to say, it's so simple. They've made it so complicated. Remember what the Jews have done, the Jewish leadership has done. They've taken the law, then they've written an interpretation of the law, which I believe is the Mishnah, and then they took and made the Gemara, which was the interpretation of the interpretation. And all those rules, you got to keep them all. That makes it really, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, is what? If you looked at page-wise, it's maybe a half inch in a Bible, maybe a quarter of an inch. It's not very big, is it? If you look at, I looked at one time, I think it was the Mishnah. It was a book series of books about, if you put them together, about like this. If you stacked them up, it'd be stacked like this, of books of interpretation of the law. Those were all the things people had to keep, in addition to what they had in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, which was very, very compact, very simple. So, and we do that. We make things more complicated than they need to be. We add stuff to it and like that, and that's something that we need to be careful about. If it's our opinion's fine. As long as we don't raise our opinion up to be, well, that's what God wants. No. If he'd have wanted it, he wrote it down. Doug?
The verse 4, you can see it particularly on the day of Pentecost. You see the mind of the rash will discern the truth. You got Peter, the guy chopping the guy's ear because he was upset. He, in particular, he speaks the words. The tongue stammerers, the crowd said, "This guy's drunk." You listen real closely and you'll find out they're not. But just that one day, this represents that one day. But the whole picture, but that one day in particular, really shows.
Yeah, it does. I am the good shepherd. So this is out of John, where he talks about, I am the good shepherd. I know my own know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not part of this fold. I must bring them also. And they will listen to my voice. And they will become one flock with one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it back. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own. I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it back. This commandment I received from my Father. Dissension occurred again among the Jews because of the words. Many of them were saying, he has a demon and he's insane. Why do you listen to him? Others were saying, these are not the words of one who is demon-possessed. A demon cannot open the eyes of those who are blind, can it? Who does Jesus say will listen to him? Well, the piece of listen, but this is a shock to the Jews, what he says, that I have underlined in verse 16. Huh? The Gentiles. That's who he's talking about here. He says, I have other sheep that are not of this fold, the fold being all the Jews. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. In other words, you haven't listened to God as a group. Individuals, yes. I've got disciples standing behind me that are listening to me. But as a group, you haven't. But these people, they're going to listen to me. These Gentiles, these people that you've just said, oh, they're like dogs, they kind of were like dogs. They were pretty savage. He said, they're going to listen to me. Remember what Jonah, what he was greeted with when he went to Nineveh? Those are Gentiles. He said, repent. And they all listened. Well, he's talking about us. He says, we're part of that other flock that he's going to bring into his fold. And they'll listen to my voice. You aren't, but I will, but they will. I'm going to kind of come back to this if I get to it, which I may not. Why will they listen to him? Because it's a simple truth. It was simple. No longer will the fool be called noble, or rogue be spoken as generous. For the fool speaks nonsense, and his heart inclines towards wickedness, to practice ungodliness, and to speak error against the Lord, to keep the hungry person unsatisfied, and to withhold drink from the thirsty. Why do the people regard a fool as someone who is noble?
People,
Yes. Yes. This is the Jewish community at the time of Christ.
well, because they are listening to Jesus. And the Jewish hierarchy is not.
No, they're not. But they're telling the people, this is what needs to be done. How do they feel about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the rank and file Jew? Haven't they raised them up to be noble with what they've said? And here it calls them a fool. Where does the fool lead you, and how does the fool do it? Away from God. How do they do it? And it's happened all along. They tell you what you want to hear. They reinforce your weaknesses and make you feel good about it.
Who's the real people that hear?
The people that follow them, okay? But the fool is leading you in that way. You had the fool, which would be those people who were leading people away from God to keep their power. What's the person who remains hungry and thirsty, seeking but not getting? Think spiritual. The bread of heaven, the truth. When he talks to the lady, the Samaritan woman at the well, what does he say? I'm going to give you water and you won't be thirsty anymore. So what are they thirsty for? What are they hungry for? The Word, God. That's what they're hungry for. That's what Isaiah is getting to here. He's being very metaphorical, if you will, as far as what he's talking about. What's the biblical definition of a fool? Because we think of it in context of what we call somebody who's a fool, did something dumb.
People seeking the easy way.
Huh?
People seeking the easy
Well, that's what we think. This is the biblical definition. A fool has said in his heart, there is no God. That's the definition of a fool. They are corrupt. They've committed detestable acts. There is no one who does good. In other words, nobody does anything good. Okay, we're all bad. That's the fool, and there's no God. The Lord has looked down from heaven upon the sons of mankind to see if there is any who understand, who seek God. Because the fool is going to lead everybody away, because there is no God. They have all turned aside. Together they are corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. So the basic premise, what's the basic premise a fool works from? And what path do they choose? Basic premise is there is no God. Yeah, they can do everything on their own. We can take care of this all by ourselves and like that. We don't need God. Yeah. Yeah.
For great scientists, Darwin didn't believe in God at the start.
Do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? Yes.
He's a great scientist,
Yeah.
but he's a fool.
So when you see fool in a Bible, it needs to be framed in this. Because we have an interpretation of what a fool is in our society. That's not what this is. And I'm past time, aren't I? Okay. I'm going to stop right here.